What if the mysterious world of Gravity Falls got turned into a Pokemon region? I made over 70 brand new Pokemon inspired by the different wacky characters, creepy cryptids, and otherworldly gods that can be found across this beloved cartoon. In fact, the starter Pokemon are all based on different things you see in the iconic intro. Starting with the grass-type starter, Sprouttle, a muddy swine based on Mabel's pet pig, Waddle. And while its evolution Soddles is an overprotective chubby wall that blocks all incoming damage, Clobbles is a forest beast that hits so hard trainers would pick adding it to their team over unlocking the ability to time travel. But what's this? A new form of Clobbles has appeared, and instead of being grass ground, it's the completely opposite typing of fire rock. That's right, this new region also brings with it a new mechanic called alternate reality form. Thanks to the reality band, trainers in this region can pluck a version of their Pokemon from a different reality entirely, dramatically changing how they look and battle in an instant. With this form of Clobbles also being based on the hyper-intelligent Waddles voiced by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Sparkling is a Fireball Bat Fire-type starter based on the huge bat face that appears in the campfire section of the intro. And its evolution Kindwing is said to love when its trainer tells it scary stories, even preferring to fall asleep to them. But Campyro is the source of the scary stories itself, as merely glancing at this Pokemon is enough to make even the most hardcore trainers cry for their mama. But its alt form might be even scarier, because it's a giant sea monster based on the Gobblewonker. And speaking of sea monsters, Photide is a baby sea man based on this photo from the intro. And while its evolution Telepike has gained the psychic typing, allowing it to send and receive psychic signals with its exposed brain-like skin, its final stage has become so advanced, some trainers report having full-on telepathic conversations with them. And its alt form has a more traditional merman design. However, its scales have been replaced with sharp rose petals and thorns. Tweetwin is an early route bird Pokemon that actually has a split evolution based on its gender, as Tweepine Male is a nervous but adventurous bluebird with a built-in hat inspired by Dipper. And its alt form sees it become a menacing operatic dark type based on Bipper. And while female Tweetwin is a pink bird that's constantly overjoyed and expressive, just like Mabel, its alt form becomes a more reserved and snobby purple bird based on Pacifica in the early episode. Digian is a small mouse based on Gideon who loves to steal the precious items of others and hide them in its big cheeks. And while its evolution now sports his iconic hairstyle, its alt form is a steel electric type based on the giant robot Gideon from the Season 1 finale. Wildie is a pure fire type fox based on Windy. Its evolution Kinderoy is known to be mostly docile. However, if its friends or trainers are threatened, it will become extremely aggressive. And its final stage Cinderoy is able to whip giant waves of pure flames with its constantly ignited tail. But its alt form is based on Windy's dad, Manly Dan, and is just as physically strong and boisterous. Robewing is a ghost flying type frigate bird whose large red chest is based on the heart that appears on the emo Robbie's hood. And just like Robbie, Robewing is in a constant state of brooding, often even acting too cool to listen to its trainer's command. But its alt form is a very mischievous goblin based on young Robbie. Spruceus is a helpful beaver based on Sue, and is always helping out around the forest, building dams, and even repairing birds' nests. And its alt form is based on the briefly seen Deuce, and instead uses its new electrical abilities to repair damage across large cities. Scamouse is a scheming rodent who's always looking for new ways to trick trainers into dropping or giving up their hard-earned Pokédollars. Because Rodevious is based on Grunkle Stan and his scamming ways, and that of course means its alt form is based on his twin brother Ford. And now that the main squad is taken care of, let's move on to Gaswarm, a small grass-type gnome who's incredibly weak. However, they're still able to survive in the harsh environment of the forest, thanks to their ability to combine into their monster mode. Based on the same ability possessed by the Gravity Falls gnomes, this incredibly powerful state works just like Wishy-Washy schooling form. And the alternate form of this state is instead a pyro wizard with teeth inspired by a vampire, just like Mabel thought Norman was. Trixect is a small spider with a face design similar to the Summerween Trickster. Its evolution is even closer closer to the trickster's monstrous true form. But its alt form is the complete opposite of the original, going from a dark bug to a psychic-powered bird. Rublin is a stone creature that builds its own clay head armor, which it bashes into foes. And unfortunately, its evolution has done this a bit too much, giving it a wild and constantly concussed mental state similar to Old Man McGucket. However, its alt form has kept enough of its memory and intelligence to build its own pure steel armor. Gravitian Bellsprout is a bug-type regional variant that's much more pale and disturbing because it evolves into Shea Sprout, a cryptid monster based on the shapeshifter that uses its large pincer mouth to siphon the life force out of foes before tossing away their carcasses like they're trash. But its alt form would never do that, as its mouth has been turned into a heavy metal shredder, infusing it with the raw power of recycling. Scrimcade is an electronic entity that disguises itself as an arcade game, waiting for unsuspecting customers to get close before knocking them out and stealing all their tokens, hitting them with the same fighting game power as Rumble McSkirmish. And its alt form changes to a ground type and sports a large drill as a reference to the real-world arcade game Dig Dug. Squirret is a ghost fire type that is said to have once been a lowly squire who was slain in battle serving a king who cared nothing for his subjects. Its evolution Mornshaft can be found in collapsed caves where miners were lost in the pursuit of gathering materials for rich organizations. And Corduroys is an eternally burning ghoul based on Archibald Corduroy, who was left to perish after being denied entry into the Northwest Mansion. And while its alt form is a water-type squid, it still carries the same victim of the rich theme, as it's said to house the spirits of boat crews sent to discover new lands for wealthy nations to conquer. Gravitian Ditto is a pure grass-type living piece of paper that folds itself up to resemble origami versions of other Pokemon, just like how Dipper cloned himself with a copier machine. And its alt form is a liquefied water type based on the tragic fate of Dipper's clone. Gravitian Baneri is a rainbow fairy type because, as we can see with its Lopunny, it's based on Giffany. And while this version is super sweet and kind, its alt form is incredibly possessive of the Fakemon Spruceus, destroying anyone who gets near one, just like Giffany's obsession with Seuss. Capsanihilated is a giant T-Rex creature with sharp rocky armor made of solidified amber, and is based on the dinosaurs found underneath the Northwest Mansion. And its alt form is actually a flying fire type, as it now sports a more pterodactyl-like build and constantly drips with a molten hot liquid amber. Minitar is a small fighting type who's always training its physical strength, so it can one day evolve into the Minotaur-themed Minisatar, who will continue its training in the pursuit of becoming the strongest member of its entire pack, with its alt form being the ultimate test of their strength, as it's based on the Minotaur's ancient enemy, the Multi-Bear. Gobguard is a beastly goblin based on the Grim Lobin, who eats exclusively by stealing plants out of unsuspecting people's gardens. But its alt form would never even dream of doing that, as it's a pure fairy-type healer that can be found across the many Poke Centers in the Gravity Falls region. Celestrot is a fairy-type pony named after Celesta Bell Bethabel, who you'd think would be super cute and friendly, but its evolution Hoitrot is actually super stuck up, just like the unicorns from Gravity Falls. And its alt form is based on the Centaur Tar, and is proof that this region is really getting out of hand. Speaking of, Croneling is a pure psychic type based on the Time Baby. Its evolution Apocchild has so much psychic energy it can briefly freeze time itself, but its alt form is a pure fighting type baby that's ready to throw hands. And that might be the first time in human history that sentence has been said. And last but not least are this region's two legendary Pokemon. Introducing Cyphero, a psychic fairy type triangular demon based on Bill Cipher, who has an insane interaction with this region's new mechanic, as instead of being swapped with a different dimensional counterpart of itself, it instead takes the chance to put the multiverse into its own hands, transforming into this new mind-bendingly powerful state that everything near it will begin rapidly swapping between dimensions, just like Weird Mageddon. But Axolite is a being of pure good. Based on the Axolotl, the highest powered entity in all of Gravity Falls, this fairy type is said to be much stronger than even the powered-up version of Cyphero. However, it rarely interferes with any events in other dimensions for some odd reason. But if it gains access to the multiverse via the region's new mechanic, its adult form will instead become a full-on godly being of near infinite power. If you like today's video, then you're definitely gonna like these two videos where I made an entire region based on Avatar: The Last Airbender and Adventure Time. As always, huge thank you to all the artists that worked on today's Pokemon. They can all be found in the description, so make sure to go check them out. And I'll see you all in the next one, but until then, peace.